Minister, thank you very much indeed. I think, folks, it's always great to see the Minister attending events like this, but when she comes along with a shed load of money, that's even better again, isn't it? I brought this up here onto the podium with me just to explain it to you as to why I'm hobbling around on one of these things at the moment. A couple of weeks ago, I did a very simple thing, but like I'm inclined to do sometimes in my life, a very stupid thing. I was going into the Super Value down the road from where I live in Cabinteely in Dublin, and getting out of the car and just simply getting a shopping bag out of the boot. I kind of lost my concentration. Somebody blew a horn or did something going past or whatever, and I just lost my concentration for a second and tripped over the footpath and fractured my hip. It's not the worst thing that can happen to you in life. The other thing about it is I also strained a groin muscle. That's giving me a little bit of jip here at the moment. But the plus side of it is, anybody who sees you, I was on 2 of these actually for about 3 or 4 weeks, and people are very good. Going in and out of places, people will come up to you and say, can I give you a hand? Can I do something for you? Like coming out of a shop one day, a young lady carried my shopping bag to the car and put it in the car for me and all that, and then drove off. But as I said, people are very kind, and I think what I'm going to do, and this is just a little bit of kind of support, if you like, for me. I think I'll keep this because there's value in it, trust me. He was mentioned to you, of course, ladies and gentlemen, a moment ago, and I'd like you to give a huge big welcome, of course, to your Chief Executive Officer of Men's Sheds, Enda Egan. Thank you very much indeed. Enda, please.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning to everybody, and you're very welcome here to our first national conference on Shedfest. And what a wonderful and brilliant location to have it in here in the show centre in Virginia. This has to be one of the most unique and amazing premises that you will find anywhere around the country in a small country town in a rural county. It's an amazing achievement for everybody involved. There's no doubt about that, and the extra little bit of tarmac out there is going to really finish the job off. The last time I met the Minister, would you believe, was actually at the ploughing match, and it was spilling out of heavens, and I seen this lady coming down through the muck and water and any other word you want to use to describe it, and it turned out to be Minister Humphreys in blue Wellingtons and a blue coat, so I can confirm that blue is definitely her colour, that's for sure. But just to maybe reverse slightly back to 2 years ago, and the Minister did mention it there in her speech, and that was the first time that I met her over in the men's shed in Belturbet. And a couple of things happened that day. One was that you could see that the Minister had a real interest in the sheds and a real interest in what community organisations are doing and the value of community organisations, you know, within the community, within the wider sector of life. And I think she had a real connection with what the men's shed were actually doing, and not just the workshop sort of stuff, but the whole social gathering and the fact that it brings men together, and the fact that, you know, in rural and isolated areas, men's sheds play a huge role that probably no other organisation actually plays, so we're quite unique within that. And I think the Minister got that very, very quickly. Also, one of the best presentations that I've seen given in my 20-odd years working across organisations was given on that day by Michael in the men's shed in Belturbet, and I think that certainly you know, gave the Minister a very clear indication of the value that sheds were given to society, but also the needs that sheds actually have. And there is a kind of a famous statement by Barack Obama where he says, you know, money is not the only answer, but it does make a difference. And men's sheds can really, I think, relate to that. Money is not the only thing the sheds need, but it does make a difference. So this funding is going to make a massive difference on simple things. And that's what sheds are really all about, is the simple things. And the simple things here are actually keeping the lights turned on, keeping a bit of heat in the place, paying the insurance, being able to turn on and boil the kettle. And as everybody knows, you will find within men's sheds very expensive tools in workshops. And men often, as the Minister alluded to, sometimes there can be competition among some of the sheds. And very often they'll talk about, the very expensive DeWalt shoe tools or Makita or Milwaukee or whatever. But probably the most important tool in the shed, you'll probably buy it in Lidl for about $17.99, and that's the kettle. And most sheds might have 2 or 3 kettles. And that's really important because that's what brings the men in there. And one of our most important mottos is that there's a role for every man in the men's shed. So men's sheds are not just about, the workshops and the carpentry and the metalwork and all that stuff. It takes men to do the governance. It takes guys to come in and actually run the committees and keep the minutes of the meetings and ensure that we have, all the proper governance in sheds that's required. And it takes someone to turn on the kettle and put the water in the kettle, and there's a role for every man in a men's shed. And it's really important that we get that message out there because, since COVID, one of the key things is that, on an all-island basis, we had about 10,000 men per week attending sheds prior to COVID. That's now down to about 6,000. And the importance of that €3,000 per shed, and we've seen this with the previous grant that the Minister gives, it actually gives a renewed energy to the sheds. It gets guys coming back in because they know that they're actually safe and sustainable for the next 12 months. And €3,000 means that all these sheds will actually be open. They'll be open to bring in new men. As we say, men in the sheds range from 18 to 102. And that's the factual sort of figures. But we need more men to get involved. There's been loads of men prior to COVID, maybe as a result of COVID, their health has deteriorated. They no longer maybe have the enthusiasm for sheds. And we want to make a huge renewed effort to bring those guys back into the sheds and get sheds up and going again as they were doing beforehand. The really important thing about men's sheds is that, they're huge connectors within communities. They're huge enablers within communities. It's not just what goes on in the shed. The Minister made a great announcement in the budget for Tidy Towns. A lot of the support work that goes on within Tidy Towns, the flower boxes, the benches, the bird boxes, the bat boxes, most of that stuff is actually made in the men's shed. And then you have sports groups, you have community groups, you have youth clubs, you have organisations for older people that the men's sheds actually do a lot of work for. You will very often see big national fundraising events coming from, Malin to Mizzen and coming right down through the country, and men's sheds are actually doing all the stewarding along the way. And so we're not just about the shed, it is the support and the connection within communities. I remember one of the first conversations that I had down in a part of the country that would be within the Just Transition Fund. And the man stood up there and he talked about, spending 40 years of his life working in Burnamona. And when his job in Burnamona ended, he said, he was sitting inside the window in the morning looking out, and all he had was the cup of tea, the toast and the marmalade. And he said when he got introduced to the men's shed, he just was not introduced to 20 guys in a men's shed. He was introduced to 20 guys in a youth club. He was introduced to 20 guys, that were involved in Tidy Towns, another 20 guys that was involved in sports clubs, older persons organisations. He said suddenly a whole new world actually opened up because of the men's shed. And he felt that day, and he had a chair beside him that was empty. And he spoke about a friend of his who died by suicide. And he said, I genuinely believe if my friend was aware of the men's shed, that seat wouldn't be empty. So that's the power of an organisation such as the men's shed. we find a huge amount of, that connection within the sheds now is moving out into what are, I suppose, new communities. Sheds are very neutral spaces. We welcome everybody into a men's shed. Colour, race, religion, sexual orientation, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. When somebody walks into a men's shed, they're a shedder. Guys don't care who you are, what you are, where you came from. The kettle's plugged in, the chair is pulled out, and everybody is welcome. And we act as a huge support and gel and glue within communities. And that has been seen right around the country in the last year and a half, 2 years, particularly in relation to the crisis in the Ukraine and so forth. So the role that sheds play, I think, is absolutely massive. Within our organisation, we do a lot of stuff around men's health. There's a huge amount of partners that I really need to be thanking here today. Most of them have stands here with us, so I just want to say a huge welcome to everybody that support us in providing health supports for men's within the sheds. There's a huge amount of staff that I need to thank, but I certainly want to thank Eva, James, Ben and Rebecca, who have put a lot of work into making this conference happen here today. Behind every organisation, there's a good board. Eamon, the chairperson's here in front of me. So there's a huge amount of stuff that actually takes place. You may remember after Ireland won the Six Nations, I think it was in 2018, and Joe Smith was asked afterwards, by one of Michael's ex-colleagues, what does it take to win a Six Nations? And they said to him, can you sum it up in a sentence? And he said, well, I can do better than that. I can sum it up in one word. It's everything. And it's a bit like that for the men's sheds. It takes everything. It takes a village to raise a child, to say in China. It takes a village to run a shed. It takes all that huge sort of involvement. Within our organisation, we represent sheds north and south. One of the most amazing things that I have seen on journeys up to Northern Ireland is how sheds act as agents for reconciliation, how they act as agents for change in a real positive way. And these are all the things that happens, that the Minister's announcement this morning allows to continue to happen. And I don't think that there's any real way, to be honest, that you can really explain that, or that you can put that into a communication narrative that really does it justice. So that in itself is a difficulty that we as an organisation, sometimes face, where it can be challenging to get your message out there along the way. I didn't intend to sort of start on a quotation from Barack Obama, and I didn't intend to finish on one, but I'm going to. And there's a great statement that he says, when you continue to push on, you achieve what you set out to achieve. And that's the great thing about sheds. Sheds have been pushing on all the time. It's the one thing that we do. We keep going. So that's a great statement, and I think that's how sheds have survived over the years, is by continuing to push on. That's how we have 435 sheds in the Republic of Ireland, another 50 in Northern Ireland registered with our organisation. 435 is the largest number of sheds per head of capita anywhere in the world. So there's something that the sheds are responding to in our society. And I think that's one of the most amazing things. There's a great statistic out there that shows that the happier that people are, the longer they live. Not to do with medication, would you believe? It's not to do with a whole lot of things. It's actually to do with happiness. And I can say in my 50-odd years on the planet and 20-odd years working across leadership roles in a number of different organisations, when you walk into a men's shed, there'll be a smile on your face from the time you go in until the time you come out. And that's something very unique. It's that magic kind of dust. As someone said to me, if we could bottle that and sell it. And I said, well, we don't need to bottle it. We have it in the sheds. It's there. So look, thanks everybody. And as Barack Obama would say, keep pushing on. Thank you.